On my channel recently, I've done a few videos. They mainly are collab videos around a powerful singular entity in fiction that can take out the majority of the rest. So for instance, we did Itachi on my side channel, and on this channel, we did Aizen from Bleach with Clyde. Those videos are a little bit tongue-in-cheek in the naming, where we say 99.9%, because while it's true, it's not really talking about every known popular heavy hitter of all time. It's just sort of a joke title based on, well, 99.9% of fiction would in fact get beat up by Itachi and Aizen in 1v1s. That's just true. Like, who in Game of Thrones is gonna take them out? Like, just realistically. Or Twilight, are they taking out Itachi or Aizen? You know, think about any of these characters. Homelander, not happening. In those videos, we went over, just for the fun of it, even particularly strong hacks abilities. So Aizen and Itachi, they both have very powerful hypnosis abilities that conventionally strong fighters don't have resistances to, that lets them win 1v1s, even against people that might be more powerful than them. So in this video, though, we'll be talking about Dr. Doom. Now, Dr. Doom, unlike Aizen and Itachi, actually does beat 99.9% of most characters in fiction, even in the most popular heavy hitter sets. So most characters you can think of, Dr. Doom actually does have a reason for why you might think he would beat them. So with me today, I brought Chuck and Crisis Comics. They both are experts on this topic, so I'll just be kind of asking them some questions I think you guys will find interesting. And with that out of the way, I guess we'll start out with Chuck, and then Crisis and I will kind of go over a bit of something more interesting in terms of cross-verse discussions with the character. But Chuck, he sort of has more of the conventional take here, where just going off of the main comics alone and something more standard or orthodox, what would realistically happen if you were to throw Dr. Doom in a verse like One Piece, in a verse like Bleach, in a verse like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, anything else? What do you think would realistically happen if you were to throw Dr. Doom in there? And I'm kind of curious how you think he would actually interact with certain abilities. Like, how do you think he would interact with something like Tsukuyomi from Itachi? Or how do you think he would deal with, like, Aizen's immortality, Yuha's almighty? Could he touch sort of like a being made of light, like, you know, the hockey users and characters like Kizaru? I'm kind of actually curious about that. Do you think he has a resistance to Toon Force and things like that? So without further ado, let's hear it.
So before I really get into what exactly he would really do in those situations, one thing is clear, that Dr. Doom is kind of like a composite character. Now, what I mean by that is you can take an archetype or a general, like, you know, strong character in a particular concept, right? And then you combine those by several times. You might even like amplify those abilities by several times. And then you pretty much get every single ability you can think of in fiction. That is Dr. Doom. So what I mean by that is you take Iron Man's expertise of technology, which has allowed him to fight against gods and cosmic entities before. He's one of the smartest people in Marvel. And even Dr. Doom is above him, right? So we take that. And then you give him Doctor Strange level magic. You even give him some dark arts, which is stuff that Doctor Strange himself doesn't even dwell into, right? So you combine Iron Man and Doctor Strange. You give him a little bit of Ichigo in there because he is a master swordsman. He has used a soul sword, which is a mystical sword in Marvel that is very, very hard to use. Not many people can actually access or even use it properly.
Would you say something like a soul sword would negate like a conventional physical durability? Like you need like more of a specific resistance to tank it?
Those specifically can attack your soul. So yeah, so he has wielded that. He has a little bit of like high tier, maybe even like low god tier martial arts. Although in Marvel, he is not like the top tier martial artist. He has competed against those guys that have really good martial arts, like Taskmaster, who has literally copied virtually every other character, including Captain America, and Chi, Iron Fist, and these guys themselves have infinite techniques, or they have trained in realms outside of time and space, and they have gathered more techniques than virtually almost anyone in fiction, right? Like, you can get every martial arts from Baki or One Punch Man, Dragon Ball, whatever, right? And that would still just be a mere fraction of what these masters in Marvel have, and Dr. Doom can fight against the best of them, right? So not only does this guy have crazy science and magic, hand-to-hand combat, he has great weaponry. He can freeze people, he can hypnotize you, he can transfer his mind, he can drain your energy, he can literally analyze and use their own power against you, he can mimic your own moves and abilities. And another crazy thing is that he's kind of like a Saiyan or like a Hulk type of character in terms of adaptation, because Although, sure, he's not getting strong like through anger, right? It is more so through his willpower and through his analysis, because through his microcomputers, he can literally like get exponentially powerful. So when he was in the Triumphant Torment arc with Doctor Strange, he was able to pretty much learn how to use his advanced technique that he had never seen before in pretty much a few minutes. He can counter virtually almost any ability you can think of, and then I'll get more into specifics as to what he would exactly do against those abilities. But just know that he is basically like a jack of all trades, master of many, dare I say master of nearly all. As for the specifics as to why Doctor Doom is immeasurably fast and why he's currently stronger in base or in his Source or Supreme Mantle than he was when he held the power of the Ivory Kings themselves, that is quite easy to get into. Even back in the day, Silver Surfer could battle while time traveling at the same time. Adam Warlock and Thanos have been able to move around in timeless, spaceless, and conceptless voids, where literally everything was erased, including the cosmic entities themselves. Even Doctor Strange and other defenders, including some that aren't really on Doctor Doom's level but are quite impressive themselves, were able to move in and perceive a battle of primordial cosmic entities in a realm that existed before science, magic, time-space, and dimensionality were even a thing to begin with. Valkyrie Jane Foster could also cross through and between several infinite realms in the blink of an eye, including Asgard itself, which has a pretty big cosmology because it has several infinite gaps between it and the inner reaches of the already infinite universe. Even people under Doctor Doom's tier like Ares could move between Planck moments, which is the absolute shortest measurement of time. And Doctor Doom, having fought some of these characters before or would scale from them, would also be on a similar scale quite easily. Now, as I mentioned previously, Pre-Retcon Beyonder was many times stronger than all of the cosmic classic abstracts. And even he, an incomplete Ivory unit, was able to battle against Celestials on every dimension in reality simultaneously. Then this Beyonder evolves into Cosmos, becomes even stronger, learns more about the Marvel Omniverse, and reaches his mental maturity. And even though he's several infinite layers stronger than he was back in the classic days when he was already a big deal, he is still able to be pressed by God of Stories Loki, who has narrative and story negation and traps, which even Doctor Doom was able to use against him. A Nightmare, an eldritch entity who feeds off of, well, nightmares, was able to toy with the 2015 Beyonders, who had murdered virtually every cosmic entity, including the Living Tribunal, Celestials, and Eternity. And this is basically the power source that God Emperor Doom used to basically make everything as he wanted to. Yet even so, as strong as Nightmare is, Doctor Doom could counter his reality warping, and Wanda and Thor, who Doctor Doom has fought alongside and against before, have stated that they themselves are equal to Nightmare's power, so all of these guys would scale from his feat of, defeating these Beyonders. Other characters like Blue Marvel, who's another really strong Superman type of character in Marvel, was able to destroy that quote-unquote physical shell of a Beyonder, so it is all very consistent that these higher tier levels from 10 to 20 or 30 years ago are more so the standard for the high tier heroes and villains now, right? So in other words, threats like the 2010 era Chaos King and Avatar of Oblivion, who aged almost all of the Marvel multiverse and its higher realms, that took a heavily amped Hercules to fight against, would now be handled with moderate to no difficulty by most of the current higher tier characters, like Doctor Doom, right?
In terms of adaptation, that's sort of a hot topic these days, because characters like Maharaga from JJK, Aizen has adaptation, Goku has adaptation, Boo, characters like that. So I'm kind of curious, actually, what level of adaptation are we talking about? Like, what's something in particular that he adapted to that you would say is, like, particularly impressive? Like, so if he was to go into a burst, and let's say for whatever reason, someone was going to make an excuse that he didn't have, like, a very niche, specific counter to a power, what's a good argument for something that he could adapt to realistically?
He has, like, absorbed a lot of knowledge in a short period of time. Like, he outright straight up PhDs, or at least, like, high level of intelligence and expertise in the topic within a couple of months to maybe even a few years. And most people, even the smartest people in Marvel, would take like decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years to even get that fraction of what Doctor Doom has, right? And on top of that, Doctor Doom has several fields of expertise. virtually almost anything you can think of, he will find a way. He will analyze it. He has informational like machines, right, that can do it like in nanoseconds. And well, that's even a low ball, right? Because obviously these guys are dealing with things beyond time and space, right?
I think what we're going to do here is talk about how strong he is and how fast he is. And then we'll kind of get into like specific hacks counters. And then we'll kind of get into Crisis here and what he wanted to say.
Dr. Doom has fought against entities that literally are based or derived or even transcend or contain concepts, ideas, dualities, life and death, dark and light, right? And things that encompass them, things that transcend spatial dimensions, infinite spatial dimensions.
Things that aren't based on the physical attacks that pretty much every verse would even utilize.
Yeah, so to give you a really good frame of reference for how insanely smart Dr. Doom is and how crazy even like, quote unquote, intelligent normal humans are in Marvel, Amadeus Cho, who I'd say is like maybe top 20, top 10 right now, right? Even back in the day, he was able to like not only analyze and see the infinite multiverse through its infinite steps, but he could also scan through infinite multiverses because there are infinite multiverses in Marvel, right? And then you get to Dreamtime, which is like an even higher realm. It's actually several layers above the infinite spatial temporal living universe, and Asgard, which Asgard is already infinitely beyond the bounds of the mortal universe. There's a lot of transcendences in between. There's a lot of layers, which makes this really complicated for most crossover matches because most people think are like, oh, like he's a danger to the Earth, right? He's only planetary. But it's like, no, these guys are fighting crazy stuff, especially when you get into like, what realms are these guys affecting? What is their power set? Where are they drawing this power from, right? But anyways, with these hellish realms, for example, Magic, she gets her power from Limbo, which is one of those higher realms. Even she is literally outerversal, right? And she's not even one of the strongest characters in Marvel, right? You have Dreamtime, the astral plane. That is basically where the telepaths get their power from, like Apocalypse, Jean Grey, Professor Xavier, Onslaught. And anyways, once Amadeus Cho got to Dreamtime, again, this guy can literally see the multiverse on infinite levels. He was like, I cannot comprehend this. Like, even mathematics does not do anything here. So you get all these higher dimensional realms. And again, Dr. Doom has fought against Mephisto and Dormammu, even Mephisto himself. His realm is infinitely transcendental to like that infinitely layered universe and all those other realms. You're already looking into outerversal, like several layers above baseline outer, and that is just for base Dr. Doom, not even at the strongest. When you go off the cosmology, Dr. Doom scales to the very high ends, even without all those external power-ups or whatever, right? God Emperor Doom. I would honestly even argue that base Doom right now is stronger than God Emperor Doom was in 2015. And that is because of a lot of increases in power. Kind of like in Dragon Ball, right? How like base Goku became stronger than Super Saiyan Blue Vegito and Ultra Instinct from earlier arcs. Same thing here. Dr. Doom in base is basically in those like high, those outerversal levels, right?
When I think of Doom, this guy came out of nowhere and he ripped Thanos' spine out of his body with like his bare hands, like just no difficulty. And it was so intense that it's what inspired Black Frieza ripping gas apart, like in the manga for Dragon Ball. Like it was that iconic of a scene. So I was actually kind of curious how like just physically strong, just like realistically, do you think this character is? Because you said he has godlike martial arts. He's probably throwing hands better than Goku, so it's like, what does that even mean for him? And then how fast do you think that is too? So we talked about he's kind of beyond these abstract entities that are absorbing multiverses. Maybe they're kind of reaching realms of logic. But where in this cosmology do you think he really fits into it all?
Let's like picture this, right? So we have like those classic era heralds, and I'm talking to like 60s, 70s. Even these weakest guys could blow up stars, right? And endanger galaxies. So if you guys remember the pre-retcon Beyonder, right? In the 70s Secret Wars, he was supposed to be the strongest character at the time. He was supposed to exist outside of the Marvel multiverse. And verbatim, said to be hundreds, thousands, millions of times stronger than every cosmic entity put together. And even back then, the cosmic entities, even just the avatars, were already outerversal, right? They literally extend to like the highest realms pretty much, right?
And an outerversal being is a being beyond the concept of space and time. So even if a character could blow up an infinite universe, they're just blowing up an infinite space. Or if there's a higher dimensional universe, it's still within space. So it's kind of beyond the concept of things that would embody a multiverse, a hyperverse, etc. Just for the audience.
That is still below what Doctor Doom is at, like by like several infinite magnitudes, right? That's basically what I'm trying to tell you guys here. So you get into the higher outer stuff once you get into modern Marvel, because they incorporated more layers. We have the far shore. We got more specifics on the negative zone, a crossroads, right? half a dozen, maybe over a dozen, maybe 24 layers, like of above baseline outerverse. So you're looking at.
And then obviously his speed would be inherently inaccessible because he's not bound by time. Does he freely travel throughout time if he wishes? Like, does he?
Yeah. So he has automatic time travel through his suit. He also has external machines too. He can teleport. He can heal himself too. His shields can negate a lot of stuff. But the thing is with his suit, so he can time travel. And he can pretty much just use it whenever he wants. A really important thing here is you guys might be like, hey, Dr. Doom, he's not like Silver Surfer, Thor level fast, right? But he actually is. You could argue he's not as agile as them. I think that's totally fair, right? Because they have completely different levels of travel. But either way, right, he can keep up with those entities. One of my favorite scaling shits, as I was talking about earlier, was with the Beyonder, is the pre-retcon Beyonder. He's supposed to be 1,000 times stronger than everyone. Then he gets retcon, he gets kind of nerfed basically. And then they're like, oh, the pre-retcon Beyonder is actually like a child unit of the Beyonder, right? He's actually like a larva basically, right? The Cosmic Cube, they're basically these, larva Beyonders. And even this one, considering actually this Beyonder was like a half power, right? He was an incomplete one at that, and he was still reversal. And then he gets way stronger. He becomes Cosmos. He gets mentored by another Cosmic Cube called Cubic. And that is where that famous statement comes from, where he's looking at the Celestials and he's like, yeah, we have infinite power. We're beyond time and space, but this guy's like infinitely beyond us. And the thing is, that's not even like the highest ranking Celestial. So, but it should be at least low outer. And then Dr. Doom, he's fighting Chthon, who is literally the elder god who made the Scarlet Witch's power. The Scarlet Witch, even years before that battle, she was able to fight alongside like her mother and Agatha to fight against this being who is stronger than the Chaos King. The Chaos King is way stronger than pre-retcon Beyonder, and he was already destroying like 99% of the multiverse. Again, Amadeus Cho could actually analyze how much he destroyed exactly. And again, right, so these characters that are already several infinite magnitudes above pre-retcon Beyonder, who is already outer, and Dr. Doom is literally matching fools who are way stronger than that. In base.
Let's say he does get thrown against Shonen Jump. All right, just because it's popular. We already went over that he's got outer Goku hands. If he was to square up with Aizen, he would combo him like they're playing a fighting game and he couldn't move. Yeah. That's fine and all, but what are some things he would actually do in response to them, like realistically? Like what happens if Itachi throws a Tsukuyomi at him or, tries to hit him with the Totsuka blade? What happens if he is confronted with Aizen's like soul hacks? Can he seal someone like Aizen? What happens if he does have to fight a Uchiha being? We kind of went over like most of like the, some of the Dragon Ball, and One Piece isn't really in contention for that type of stuff. There's not even that crazy of hacks to deal with. Like he has to beat Light. Well, he's already beyond time and space, so that's irrelevant. But how would he deal with like some of those types of hacks abilities?
He's encountered a lot of characters with similar abilities to like Aizen's and other Naruto characters like Hypnosis, or Mind Hacks or Reality Warping, Matter Manipulation. Soul hacks, existence erasure, he's outright countered that. Shield has like an AI system that'll like literally tell him of like different energy waves, so it'll warn him and he can even analyze it. One of the biggest things that helped him actually overcome not only the Watchers, but also Odin and Galactus, the Beyonder, right? All these characters are way stronger than him. He was still able to analyze and modify his armor mid-battle so that he could actually withstand the power he absorbed, even though it was literally, I'm not talking like 10, 100 times, 1,000 times more power than his own base could take. I'm talking like several infinite magnitudes of power that he could withstand. Even Iron Man, right, who I would say Dr. Doom is definitely smarter than him in that regard in battle IQ as well. Even he's analyzed like different energy signatures and nullified them mid-battle, even ones that he had never seen before. He's even countering magic too, right?
Yeah, the way I'm seeing it is like, even if he had equal, like, let's say he wasn't even like powerful. Like, let's say he was like some Batman, like he was throwing like Batman or something. It almost feels like he could pull off like almost like a more like efficient Batman kind of like takedown of a verse where like his suit is just traveling through time, absorbing the energy by default, auto countering and stuff like that. How weak could he be and still like take down these verses? Like, is his hacks enough, do you think, to actually just do it? Like he just has a high-end hacks degree to do it, or like so his power doesn't matter? Or do you think the power is still relevant?
Against most of fiction, I would say you could honestly take his magic and just give him his raw technology. You probably don't even have to give him like his suit either, and he could still make it out of like probably 98% of those situations.
let's say he was naked, dropped into the Naruto verse, and like no powers. You think he would be able to build a suit and then solo that verse like next day or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, even Spider-Man has made like technology like on a stranded planet. And again, it's not no disrespect to Peter, because he's like a really smart character, but he's not as smart as Doctor Doom. Been like Mr. Fantastic and other variants that have made stuff that could map out the multiverse, right? Time travel. They could explore higher dimensions, right? Outside of spatial temporal stuff. Doctor Doom is pretty much on the same, right? Even Thanos himself was like, yeah, I need to get one of Doctor Doom's time machines, even though he has made his own, right? So like one of the things too that I was talking about earlier is his informational computer system. It'll like help him exponentially adapt. So as I said, he had never like studied advanced martial arts. He's only done it on his own. Triumph and Torment, that is where he went there the first time to see those mystic sorcerers. And he saw all of their abilities and he's like, oh, I need to like actually adapt quickly, right? So he picked up on their movements, kind of like how Goku did achieve Ultra Instinct in like 45 minutes or even less than that. Doctor Doom could probably pick up, if not all advanced abilities in most of these verses in a very short amount of time if he really needed to. Beyonder, these guys had more power, they had more versatility or whatever. He still found a way to counter them. And again, he's literally fought against a lot of high-tier opponents. Doctor Doom can literally figure out how to counter them in real time while getting ganged up on. So you have to do virtually everything at the same time just to have a chance to beat him.
You could probably talk about Doom for hours, realistically, like all the crazy stuff he's done. But just for this video, that's kind of a basic idea. Like you could drop him in a Shonen Jump verse, completely like nerfed, just no tech, and he could probably adapt to that verse like quickly and then solo it anyway.
Whichever verse you put him in, he will find a way to not only do it better than everyone else, but find other stuff that others might have not even thought was possible.
But that being said, we might have an actual canonical example of Doom being above 99.9% of fiction, and it might be arguably legit. And this is where Crisis has an interesting take, and now this will be centered around Fortnite. Now, a lot of you guys have wanted me to scale like Fortnite Goku for a while, and Crisis and I on stream, we kind of did like a joke, like Fortnite Goku versus Fortnite LeBron thing on my side channel. You guys might like it after this, but Fortnite Doom is arguably canon, probably canon, and Crisis will kind of get in all the details about that. And he takes down most of these other named powerhouses, which also might be arguably canon within Fortnite. So I'll let you handle all of that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's going to be the topic of Doctor Doom versus all of fiction, we actually basically saw that. And the evidence for it being canon, especially in the Marvel side of things, sort of lies in the main Thor run at the time, where the version of Galactus that was the super empowered, Super Galactus, basically, he was for a time the main villain of Fortnite. And in the comics, it segued right from the mainline Marvel official Thor run with this Galactus and transitioned into the actual game itself. And the writer even confirmed on Twitter, he said, yes, this is canon. The Marvel websites confirm it as well. They back it up, the official websites. So there is a precedent for these being the genuine 616 versions of the characters. There's also the sort of legal aspect, because a lot of people, when it comes to canon, they want to harp on, oh, well, does the parent company have the authority here? And as it turns out, Disney, who of course owns Marvel and Star Wars, which I'll talk about in a little bit, they put $1.5 billion into Fortnite, into Epic Games. So they actually do have a lot of influence and control over that company. And we've seen this, especially when Doctor Doom, taking up for Galactus and Thanos before him, became the main villain of this arc, this chapter of the Fortnite game. So throughout this, we see in the breadcrumbs of lore that exists in this shooter game that Doctor Doom was able to take the power from Pandora's box, which at this point, Greek mythology, it's basically the same in Fortnite, but it's just a super powerful font of energy that Doctor Doom is able to just walk up to and steal, and is able to harness its power to reshape the entire island. All of the characters in the game are sort of, afraid of him. The website, the official Fortnite website, says that no one can stand up to his power. So he just is the top dog for a good period of time there. And it's worth noting that Fortnite is basically just the nexus of all fiction.
Closest you're gonna get.
Yeah, the closest, really. I mean, Skyrim is in there, Marvel, DC, various characters. Basically, any franchise you can think of, Star Wars, like I said, they just include those characters in the lore. I mean, Fortnite is so crazy. There are just cutscenes with like the Death Star blowing up, and then Superman shows up in the same scene right afterwards. So it's pretty heavy-handed in that sense. But with that being said, especially when talking about, how does Doom compare to fiction, this is sort of the biggest case study of that. He just runs the show. He just runs the gauntlet. He sniffs out the most powerful source of energy, takes it for himself.
Which supports what Chuck was saying earlier as well.
Exactly. It is very consistent with Doom's 616 abilities. If you look at the broader nature of Fortnite, what characters, what threats would Doom sort of supplant at that point, per being the ultimate threat at that point in time? Well, of course, there is Galactus, like I said, and I think Chuck demonstrated the sort of high-tier Marvel power levels pretty thoroughly already. But we also have, God of War. We have Elder Scrolls as well, which those series house sort of insane concepts and powerhouses that, especially God of War, Seth has broken down over various times on his channel. And in episode 9, in the opening title crawl of the Star Wars movie, it says, Sidious sent out this message that for everyone to hear that he's returned. And the only way to hear that message is to play Fortnite. It was in the game at the time. And so it's kind of like essentially the Star Wars movie itself, Disney saying, all right, time to go play Fortnite to get the full story here from Star Wars. So whenever you see Darth Vader, whenever you see Palpatine, whenever you see Rey, it kind of just sort of has to be at least copies of their canon, selves, their canon iterations, because the way that Fortnite also operates, the sort of lore of it is demonstrated throughout the DC comics, the DC Batman tie-ins to Fortnite, because of course DC plays a part in that game very heavily. And it was actually edited by the story editor at the time of the Fortnite game. So it's all very collaborative. It's very hard to say that this is just some random crossover. But it's explained that when someone is taken into the loop, so when they take part in the sort of contest that Fortnite represents, they are copied as well. There is a perfect copy of them made. We see that Batman and Catwoman, they're sucked into this loop and they eventually fight copies of themselves. So that's sort of how it's explained. Kratos shows up in Fortnite. Well, obviously he has to go back to perform the events of God of War Ragnarok. Well, you can still play as Kratos in the game because he has a copy made that's just running around. And really, when you think about it, this should account for every player who's playing as Kratos running around in this island. So it's not just that they're making one copy, they're making many copies. So when Dr. Doom is this giant cosmic threat who everyone is sort of crapping their pants over, and he's called the ultimate power, no one can mess with him, that accounts for multiple versions of Beerus, of Goku, of Gohan from the superhero movie. That accounts for multiple iterations and copies of the Elder Scrolls Online protagonist and Kratos, multiple versions of Superman. We in fact see this just sort of empirically as well, because with Superman we have the sort of mainline comic book Superman, we have the Golden Age Superman skin, we have the Superman skin from the new movie, we also have Anakin Skywalker, as well as Darth Vader. There are many instances where the Fortnite sort of nexus of all realities makes copies of these heroes, multiple versions of them across time, and multiple versions of those versions if you really take into account how you would extrapolate these lore points and clearly what they're suggesting via their creation and how it impacts gameplay. And like I said, you'd have all these characters running around, you'd have multiple versions of the Hulk, you'd have multiple versions of Goku with Ultra Instinct, and Kratos and Darth Vader, and etc. And they're all jumping Dr. Doom, and the best that they could do is use some of the genius characters on the Marvel side of things who have experience with Doom, right? The best they could do is just BFR him. They were jumping him, they could weaken him just enough to teleport him away, but they didn't knock him out, they didn't kill him. Kratos, clearly in his bloodlust, he just is canonically a part of these events, whether you like it or not. He didn't kill Dr. Doom, he couldn't manage that. So if we're gonna be asking the question, how does he stack up to 99% of fiction, then case in point, just look at Fortnite, man.
Yeah. Especially if we're talking about the 99% of characters that people think about as well, which is because, conventionally speaking, most characters are above 99% of fiction that we talk about in power scaling. But if we're just talking about power scaling characters in general, that's a good example. I was curious to ask you, do you think things like other DC characters are considered canon within that game? Now, obviously, I don't think that they're going to have like some agreed shareholder opinion, but it is kind of interesting to think like, would a character like Batman Who Laughs or was Superman or whoever else, do you think that they actually have somewhat canon iterations in the game that could even be like somewhat unintentionally have a canonical battle with Doctor Doom or like a contrast with him?
Yeah, you know what's crazy is there was the Batman Who Laughs character, as you named, and he's sort of the representation of Batman combined with the Joker, and represents sort of an unchained Batman with no morals. Of course, there's sort of the meme that Batman always wins, he plans for everything, but they kind of took that to heart and personified it through Batman Who Laughs, and his creator, who wrote this big epic Batman Who Laughs saga, after it sort of concluded, in which case we saw the Batman Who Laughs take over the power from Perpetua, who's the mother of the multiverse, this incalculably powerful god of the DC cosmos, and he also as well outmaneuvered, caught the better of Wally West, who even just alone is a incredibly powerful character, but at the time he was actually amplified by a portion of Dr. Manhattan's abilities. And Dr. Manhattan is sort of similar conceptually to Perpetua. He was someone who was able to reboot the DC metaverse multiple times over, so accounting for various reboots where the entire line, all of these characters from top to bottom, were retconned and reconfigured and rebooted. That was actually revealed to be Dr. Manhattan. And so Batman Who Laughs, this writer, Scott Snyder, was able to, convey these stories in the main DC comics. After that, he wrote a Fortnite Batman crossover comic book, which, references, has narration bubbles, referencing those massive events with Batman Who Laughs at the center of them. And it showcases that villain, that character, going to the Fortnite loop and being like, this is awesome, I can cause as much mayhem as I want forever, right? And so he just is canonically running around by his creator, by the original writer of all these crazy events. He's just stuck in the loop, he loves it. So when you see Doctor Doom becoming this super powerhouse, and we know for a fact that canonically Batman Who Laughs, with all of his abilities and knowledge, he's sort of peak Batman. He's the most lethal, cutthroat, no morals behind Batman, as well as the Joker's intellect combined. He's able to, pull the rug out from under these cosmic DC powerhouses. He didn't do that, right? He didn't steal the power from Pandora's box. He hasn't become some epic god tier boss of the Fortnite, storyline, which we've seen characters like Thanos and Galactus do. By the time Batman Who Laughs shows up, Doctor Doom is the one, calling the shots, running the show, and having everybody, on red alert. So it is crazy impressive. And even like you said, the fact that DC and Marvel, maybe they haven't co-signed so much on this wider narrative, right? Like, I don't think there was any editors getting together and saying, yeah, let's have Doctor Doom, show up the Batman Who Laughs. Let's put our foot down and say that. But currently, DC and Marvel are getting along. They are printing crossover comics again as we speak. It's been the first time in like over 20 years that they've done so. But they are in, handshake agreement. And so it's totally not out of the question that you really have to take that into account. A lot of these factors here people would just sort of maybe scoff at, but really it is comic books. Silly stuff like this happens all the time. There's really no, you heard everything that Chuck said. Are you really going to think that this Fortnite crossover and all this crazy scaling, the Batman Who Laughs, you're going to think that's out of the question? When you really look at it, when you really take all these statements and all of these writer intentions, when you take him at face value, it basically shows that if Doctor Doom wanted to, and maybe he canonically actually has, not only would he a threat to 99% of fiction, but maybe even that top 1%, right? The remaining,
yes, exactly.
Number one, like the Darth Vaders, the Siddiouses, Kratos, Superman, etc. All these characters, multiple versions of them are all running around, and they would be, trying their best to beat Doctor Doom and save the day, and the best they could do is really just BFR him.
Yeah, while jumping him. He'd basically be like a Shonen Jump final boss battle, like, arc for these characters. But yeah, if you guys are interested in more scaling from Doom, you can check out Chuck and Crisis' channel. Crisis has a huge Fortnite breakdown on it in particular, if you like the Fortnite stuff. But that being said, I had one more thing I wanted to ask. Now, there's going to be the next Avengers movie. All right, it's going to be Avengers Doom today. Do you think that he's going to be, like, above, like, Dormammu? or Thanos or something like that? Or do you think he's going to be still like kind of a below them? Like, how do you think that's going to pan out? Just a little prediction.
Going by like how in Thunderbolts they're like, wanking off Sentry, they're like, oh, he's stronger than every Avenger combined, which would include Thor, Captain Marvel, right? There's also like another statement that I think he's like literally does have the power, but that was an exploding sun. It's like, it's like a downplayed version of the comic. I think in the comic it's like 1 billion, but either way, that's still pretty okay. But now we're getting into that ballpark where it's like, oh yeah, like these higher realms of power that we had in the earlier sagas, they're now like the standard because they need to be that strong. Everyone's gonna get power-ups. So Franklin Richards is literally super OP already. He's like a little kid. If he fights Doctor Doom when he's like a young kid, or it's like a teenager even, then he'll they definitely show some infinite power, right? Yeah, that's what Galactus said as well. And now, whether it'll be like Infinity Ultron level from What If, it should logically be even greater than what Kang was going to do, and Infinity Ultron anyways, because just the Kang variants were already causing like a lot of these timelines to die out. Narratively speaking, Kang is supposed to be like Thanos on like an even grander scale, right? And then Doctor Doom just like is supposed to be above that.
If he's ever stated to be like the most greatest threat they've faced so far, or like the final threat or something, you might be able to just kind of like default him above things like the Infinity Gauntlet or Dormammu as like a threat gauge. But yeah, or even the Kang, stuff like that. But
another thing I'd say too is it'll be really hard for the Avengers, especially because they've never faced like someone that combines technology and magic, right? It's either one or the other or something completely different.
That's a good point.
With Thanos, we actually have some evidence that is exactly what they're going for, because there was a recent Disney convention where they were sort of showing off or teasing elements of the upcoming Avengers movie. And we straight up do see that skeleton pull. We don't know if it's Thanos exactly for sure, but we see Doctor Doom pulling, he's holding someone's severed head and spine. So
it's very obvious iconography.
It's obvious iconography, and the inspiration we already know is 100% going to be Marvel's 2015 Secret Wars, which is the name of the upcoming movie, the second of these upcoming Avengers movies. And that is the storyline in which Doctor Doom becomes God Emperor Doom. He gets the power of a Beyonder, reshapes the entire Marvel cosmos more or less, and does totally just one-shot and humble Thanos. So, I mean, the odds are they're going to say he's the most powerful villain they ever faced, especially with Loki, the Loki show, how that ended. And we see that character basically holding the entire multiverse together. Now, I would probably say that is just beyond Dormammu. I think Dormammu is probably contained within the multiverse. At least, the Dark Dimension is a collection of multiple universes that Dormammu personifies in the MCU lore. So, infinite multiverses, more or less, is what Loki would be containing. And I think most people would probably assume that Doom is going to steal that power or be a threat to it. So no, absolutely. I think Doom's stocks are only going to get higher. I mean, they brought back RDJ for a reason. He is more or less the ultimate hero of the MCU. Maybe not in terms of sheer raw power, but if they're going to make him a villainous threat, he's going to have to put in the work against the X-Men, all the Spider-Men, multiple versions of the Avengers, Loki. No, I think it basically is a foregone conclusion at this point that Doom will be the ultimate MCU villain by the time that Doomsday and Secret Wars come out.
Yeah, so, it is a live action version, so he's not going to be as crazy as his comics, but it's very fitting, actually, for him to be such a big threat. It's actually very fitting with our video, actually, because we planned this before I even thought about the Avengers Doom movie. But that being said, I really, really would love if you guys subscribe to me and to these two here if you want more stuff on Marvel and DC. I'm going to host more collabs like this on my channel with various creators, so look forward to that. And other than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and God bless.
Bye-bye.